Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem.
Let's start with Intrauma, developer of orthopedic medical devices, raising 10 million from FITEC II. Let's stop for a second and talk about FITEC II. Very interesting structure, kind of more of a growth capital slash late stage kind of vehicle. So very interesting. I think they have two funds. One is around like 100 million, and the other one, which is the second one, is around 137. The second one especially is not yet fully deployed. They've been actually already invested in a lot of like EBITDA positive companies to sustain growth and and basically making them like grow and kind of pushing them toward being international. So what is your take on this one?
No, as you said, this is more of a growth capital than a pure venture capital round. So FITEC is positioned in the actually in the later stage, later stage moment of life of the startup. Even though this is capital for growth, if I understood it right, it is a minority investment or focus on supporting the growth of the startup. So it's in that moment where the company is actually more stable, more mature, and the capital can be used to scale and grow further the operations. So interesting that we also have that kind of capability. There are not many funds operating in that stage.
Yeah. And Italy has been good on this actually, to supporting like small and medium enterprise, especially technological one. That's very good news actually for companies that have a revenue. They hit maybe 10 to 15 million. Then there is a plethora of new players that can actually support financing and growth. So that's good news, which is like unlike what sometimes we say, like there is for early stage and like Series A sometimes is a little bit tricky. But for later stage and especially like for growing companies, there is a lot of options. So that's very interesting actually.
Yeah. There are not many operating technology. So we have a few, but pure technology, I don't think there are many players, but good stuff.
Yeah, they tend to be also in general kind of focusing on different industries. We've seen like also in later stage, kind of pushing something related to the national economy, like tourism, made in Italy kind of things, and all these kind of plays. So a very unique and specific direction, I would say. Interesting. All right, so for our AI corner, we need to talk about Syllog.ai, AI-powered corporate learning startup raising from 40 gems and Techaround. So again, AI is not slowing down. Italian people working on AI are there, and they're doing like great projects. Especially, this is a very interesting angle. So this is an application of AI, particularly for corporate learning and upskilling. So basically, instead of like going through like basically a one size fit all sort of playbook, AI can really provide like a customized education for each specific employee. So that's a very interesting way, and we can definitely see how this can be like one of the great application of AI. What's your thinking on this?
Yep. I agree with you in a way. I mean, creating, delivering courses is an interesting opportunity. There's a lot of human knowledge that must be transferred, and the very way generative AI is built is built upon human knowledge. So it's in its DNA, if I can, if you allow me the pun. So I guess this type of applications kind of, I wouldn't say obvious, but they are, they're kind of logic. So interesting to see companies being invested in this area. What makes me sad, on the other hand, is when there are rounds round announcements, and you don't know the details of the round, not even the amount of money. So I mean, undisclosed rounds tend to be a little bit kind of a bummer.
Yeah,
you know.
it's not too satisfactory. Yeah, I agree with you. Interesting. All right, we've seen also like a player which has been like basically active, which is 40 Gems. This year we've seen him in a couple of deals, so that's good news. And then another player, Techaround, which basically is a company that also supports startups. So it's not just an investor. I believe is kind of a hybrid. So they also do, and they do investing, but they also do advisory. So based in Switzerland, I believe, but with strong Italian roots at the end. Right. Let's talk about Mantel. So AnyNext co-led a 30 million investment in Mantel, Boston-based carbon capture startup. So that's worth mentioning for a couple of different reasons. So first of all, of course, basically it's not always that you see an Italian player investing abroad, especially in bigger deal, and especially leading them. So that's the first interesting point. The second one is actually the how innovative the technology is. So essentially, the problem with the decarbonization has been basically the subject of a lot of like investment in the past years. Mantel has developed a specific technology so that they can actually capture carbon, process it, and basically output something that is way less harmful. So not being a chemical engineer, I'm oversimplifying, of course, but that's the idea. So a lot of industrial application and a great alternative. So from doing a little bit of research, so far the alternative of treating CO2 was really to capture it, compress it, put it in tanks, and store it away to see for later developments. So that's pretty curious. It sounds like a nuclear waste in a way. So these guys are actually kind of taking a very, very different approach. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. As you said, the interesting point is that the round was co-led by Next, the corporate venture, corporate acceleration, corporate VC arm. That's been pretty active.
Absolutely.
And the interesting bit from the news is that the other lead investor is Shell Ventures, so Eni and Shell. And the third one is that among the following investors, there's BP Ventures, that I believe it's that BP.
Indeed.
So I mean, this company raised from three of the major, let's say, oil and energy companies that are around in the world right now. So it says something on where they're putting their chips going forward, right?
Yeah. And it's not always the case that you find competing corporates to actually, co-invest, on the surface peacefully. So very interesting. We are very curious to see how it's going to play out in the future. So awesome.
Yeah, I think they're used to building some partnerships in their deals, so they know how to do that. I mean, when you think they co-investments in new potential oil ventures, stuff like that. But as you said, peacefully, this is probably the keyword. So they're not still stepping on their toes. They're just, putting chips and looking at the future and their future. So they're still, probably, I don't know. That's pretty peaceful in coordinating that.
Not so common. I mean, that shows sign of sophistication because, it's basically a sign of people willing to collaborate. I don't know what's the underlying agreements, which probably are really tight and detailed. Not so common, though. Other industry can be really far from this kind of collaboration, which, it makes sense on paper, but again, it has different layers of complexity when it comes to collaboration in the future, potential exit, side agreements, side letters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's so from an investment problem, probably becomes a legal problem, I would say. So it's an extra layered problem.
Yeah, but again, they're used to do that in their day-by-day operations, then probably it doesn't always go well. But co-investments agreements, in particular in oil research and extraction, that those I think they're pretty common. So interesting.
True. Interesting to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk about EIB Liftt agreed to create a new investment vehicle where basically they're going to allocate 50 million each, so for a total of 100, focused on Italian companies operating in sector including life science, cybersecurity, deep tech, and clean tech. So first of all, definitely shout out to the team of Liftt because they've been like really shaking things around in many ways. So first of all, by bringing a very different take on venture investing in the past years since their inception. And secondly, by pulling a lot of like leverages, especially in the European ecosystem in general. And this is the latest news and their latest action. So that's pretty relevant. And again, investing, of course, in where Liftt is investing. So life science, deep tech, but also kind of expanding it to the Italian ecosystem in particular. So very much like a bringer of change. So definitely kudos to the Liftt team for that.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking about? I was checking, but a commitment of 50 million is kind of a bit of a high number. Not for EIB, it's pretty normal, but for Liftt. So as an investment company, it's not a multi-billion holding, as far as I know. So it is interesting. So they rather raised quite a bunch of money on this stage commitment investment, or they're planning to raise an additional round. So I don't have the number for Liftt at hand, but it would be interesting to dive deeper and take a look at the impact on their own current raise that emerges from this deal.
Yeah, that's interesting to eventually see who's backing actually this operation. If it's Liftt alone, if there are like other LPs, whether these LPs are national, international. That's a very good question to ask for sure. Yeah, that's so. Thinking about this, we are seeing a little bit of movement on the investment side and the fund size, and maybe we can finish with the latest news, and then we can do a little bit of thinking about it. So, as a last news, I would mention CDP launches Maritime Ventures, a new venture builder in collaboration with Carriper Factory, focus on nautical and port logistic tech. So again, another move from CDP in conjunction with essentially not only Carriper Factory, but also another venture accelerator from Germany, I believe. So it's a triad of players, and you can see that from the website, trying to push one of the national sort of industries. So that's interesting. The reflection is that, how far are we going to see movement in the fundraising side, given that, funds have been raised, new capital seems to flow into Italy. So when that is going to trickle down to actually founders, because we've been kind of stuck on a horizontal purgatory. And I, religiously follow your tracker and encourage people to watch the tracker that Nick has produced. So there is it's a companion to the newsletter. So check definitely that. But yeah, we are at the level roughly as last year. And I don't know, what is your take on this?
Well, I agree with you. We are not still seeing the capital raise trickling down into the ecosystem, not so much. Even though I have to say I'm only keeping track of the public rounds. And as a matter of fact, I know there are quite a few unannounced rounds here and there. And if I know of a few, there may be quite a bit more. So the capital is moving under the radar. So I expect to see quite a few announcements in the next weeks / months. Even though I'm not sure they will really move the needle. And on the other hand, I guess that the new Digital Transition Fund and the Green Transition Fund will produce a further push into new operators, into new funds. Look at Una Terra, the other venture fund on climate tech. It's not Italy based, but they raised from CDP and they will be deploying in Italy as well. So there's still capital entering the market, and if not this year, next year we will see more operations because that capital must be deployed, so it can't stand still. You can wait a bit, but eventually, if you don't move it, you will lose it.
So true, absolutely. So very looking forward to that. Right, with this news, Nick, thank you so much for joining for the week updates, and I'll see you next week.
Ciao, Jack. Ciao, everybody. Have a great week.